Now, you've probably heard of the power of a positive mental attitude. You might have read about cosmic ordering, maybe even dabbled in a bit of visualisation. But I asked Damian if his book, Do Nothing, is cut from the same cloth.
It's slightly different in that it describes where not only that mindset, but actually where positive and negative and every type of thinking comes from. So it's kind of going slightly upstream. It's saying this is what's creating all of it. So it's not about what you think, it's about the fact that you think. And so it's kind of all-encompassing, which is what makes it quite interesting. But it's not about doing, it's about understanding. And I liken it to when someone shows you how a magic trick is done. The next time you see it, it doesn't have the same effect, even though it's the same trick. Or the first time you got maths when you were at school, you were looking at it and going, how am I going to memorise all that? And then suddenly you get it. And there's nothing you actually have to do then. You understand it.
You kind of created that pathway in your mind, haven't you?
That's a nice way of putting it, actually. Yeah, you have created that pathway in your mind. So when I talk to people about this, they have to get it for themselves. So I don't essentially teach them anything. I'm just showing them something. And some people get it quicker than others. Some people get it straight away and they go, oh yeah, I do that all the time. I'm creating it. I'm the one who's doing it. And it's seeing that missing link between what happens outside of you, what I call the outside in, circumstances, everything that happens, and the feeling you get, because usually we assign that feeling to the person who's done it to us, our partner that tells us something and they're pushing our buttons, so we say, oh, they're doing it to us. We spoke to a lady the other day who was had her face bitten by a dog when she was younger, and she was scared of dogs for ages, and of course not all dogs will do that, but she had that thought in her head that all dogs will bite me. But it's still her creating that thought. It's still her doing it. It's not the dog doing it, it's her doing it.
Just through the people that you meet, that must reinforce your belief in what you're doing.
Oh, very much so. I was a graphic designer for 20 years and I came across this understanding, and within a very short period of time I thought, I've got to tell people this. The only problem is, and a lot of people who come to this understanding have this problem at first, is that they can become quite zealotic about it, because they've got something that will help people. So they want to tell people and they want to help people. And there's a bit of a joke in the sort of community. It's like, it's the hold still while I fix you. It's, I've got something to tell you, and once you know it, it'll help you.
Yeah.
But you can't do it that way, because the only way they can get it is by understanding it themselves. And the best way for you to actually teach that is to be it rather than do it. Be calm, be relaxed, let things, people see things happen to me. We had a laptop stolen from our car the other day on the tour. And my first reaction was, now what was there on there that, oh no, everything was backed up. Okay, we've got to get the glass sorted out because we've got the kids in the car next weekend. And I wasn't thinking anything else really. And other people were like, oh God, how terrible, do you need victim support? And I was like, no. What Victoria and I were thinking of was, thank God we're not the person who had to steal that. Because in their world, they needed to get it for a fix. And thank God we're not them.
When you offer that mindset or that point of view, though, to people who have for many years seen themselves as a victim and who, let's not take anything away from them. They might be incredibly hurt by a situation, or they might feel like a shadow of the person that they could be because of a situation that's happened to them in their past. You must have to be quite sensitive with how you offer that mindset to avoid, I suppose, sounding a bit glib, like, it's just water off a duck's back, and to somebody else that really might not be the case.
Absolutely, and that's why in the 2 years I've been doing this, I've learnt that you don't tell anyone anything. It would be very easy for me to say that's just your thinking, but I don't. What I do, and what people who teach this do, is they listen very deeply, because what will come up usually as the first question is not necessarily what's going on. It might look like it on the surface, but that's actually kind of the next sort of phase in what we talk about with the three principles, because actually we've all got access to this infinite possibility of wisdom. What I do is I put problems on the back burner. I say, okay, well, you're obviously in a bad way, you're obviously got lots of bad things going on. We're not going to talk about those now. We're just going to discuss thought. And it might be something as simple as, have you ever been shopping and you've been, so in your head that you've ended up with the wrong trolley at the checkout? And they go, oh yeah, I've done that a few times. Or, have you ever lost your keys and then you found them when you stopped thinking about it? Oh yeah, I've done that. So we talk about thought. And when you talk about thought at that level, people can relate to it. And then you talk about, well, where thought's created, and you say, well, we all do it the same way. We're all human, we're all alive, we're all conscious, we all think, and that's how we create our reality. And then they get that. And then you talk about the buffer, which is the moment when you create that feeling from your thought. And as soon as they see that then it's not the circumstances doing it, it's you doing it, that's sometimes as little as it takes for them to go, oh, it's not my job, it's not my wife, I'm the one who's doing it. And it can be something as simple as that. It can be a short conversation.
Do you ever get that can't see the wood for the trees feeling? Well, with school about to start, maybe you're dreading having to help with the homework because you or your child just can't grasp a certain subject. Then all of a sudden, the penny just drops. Could applying the principles laid out in Do Nothing help with those homework nightmares?
Kids are amazing. They pick up on the way we react to them. So it's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it to them. So if you're angry with your children, they'll pick up the anger and they deflect it. They don't want that, so they recoil and they don't talk to you. But children have the same access to the wisdom. I was driving along in the car with my eldest daughter the other day, and I had this little sort of plastic ball with glitter in it, which is what I call a thought ball. And when you shake it up, it's like when your thinking's just completely crazy, and the best thing to do is just put it down, do nothing with it, and it'll settle. My eldest Alana said, oh, that's like my head when I get upset. I said, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And she said, so if I think about my best friend being hurt, that's like, shaking the ball up. I said, yeah. So if I just do nothing with it and leave it, put it down, it'll be okay. I said, yeah. And then she said, but what if Harry's hurt? I'll have to go and help him. And sort of talking about her best friend, Harry. I said, well, you would know to do that. Stuff happens, but when we're in our heads about it, we don't necessarily do what's right. Now, the same applies on every single level with kids. You can say to them, look, just don't get in your head about it. And if you do, that's just your thinking. You're creating it. You're doing it. You just don't have to do anything with it. As soon as you try to do something with it and that doesn't work, that's when people get into problems. I mean, I have no doubt that things like positive thinking work for some people. 12-step programs work for some alcoholics. Some placebos work for some people. But it's all thought. It's all thought. And that's why when you go upstream and you deal with what's creating the thinking, that's why it's universal. That's why it works on so many levels. That's why it's working for so many people in so many different fields. But the reason it's not so well known yet is because you have to insightfully get it for yourself. There's no rule book. There's no 12-step process. There's no, you do this, then you do that, then you get it. Because it doesn't work like that. People see it at their own time, in their own way, insightfully. And it's almost passed on from person to person. That's why it's slow having the uptake. I mean, the three principles were kind of uncovered. I won't say discovered because they've always been there. There's always been this life force. I always think that consciousness and thought have been there. We've just sort of come along and used them in the same way that gravity's always been there, and we've come along and used it. When I say this to people, they say, well, how come this stuff isn't huge now? And they say, because it's passed from person to person very slowly.
So is Do Nothing a book of advice?
I guess you could say it's a book of advice in terms of there is nothing to do because you are already perfect. You just don't think you are. But that's kind of why the title is what it is. I can't really tell anyone to do something that they already have the answer to themselves.
So, Damian, yourself and Victoria are touring the country. You've been to the south already and you're coming back to the south to sign your books. You're going to be in Poole over the course of this weekend.
Yes.
What kind of reaction have you had from people in bookshops here in the south?
It's been really, really varied. There's been a lot of people who get it straight away. There's been a lot of people who are very interested in it. There's been some people who are stuck in a state of I know. And there's been a lot of people who just aren't interested at all. You sort of say, well, are you happy? And they say, yes, I'm absolutely fine. And you can see they're not, but they don't really want to discuss it. And that's fine. And the thing is, I think I said earlier, you can't tell this to anyone. You just kind of point people in a different direction. Say, look, there's an alternative. I mean, there's this old phrase, when the time is right, the teacher will come. And I think people who are ready for it are ready for it.
Damian Smyth and his wife Victoria will be at Waterstones in Poole on Saturday. Damian's book is called Do Nothing.